This video is brought to you by Envato. I am so bored. I mean, I don't want to criticize my fellow web designers or their clients, but honestly, it doesn't matter what I see, whether it's sites for football clubs or insurance companies or coffee shops. Absolutely everything looks like it's been cut from the same cloth. It's also just a massive missed opportunity, and we could do so much better. Why should you bother watching this video? If you are a graphic designer, a website designer, a product designer, or anybody who makes work for the web, I'm going to show you how inspiration can help you to design better products and websites. So I'm Andy Clarke, and I'm a website designer based here at my small studio called Stuff and Nonsense. You have to mind your head. In Cymru, Wales. And if you're not familiar with Wales, it's the little country that's stuck on the side of England in the United Kingdom. And if you're not familiar with that, it's the island that's sinking slowly off the west coast of Europe. So over the past few years, I've developed an unhealthy obsession, not just with Godzilla, but with magazine art directors and designers. So in this video, I'm going to take you through some of the designers who have been influencing me and using their experience to help you design better products and websites. So I wouldn't want you to think that I've got all the answers, because honestly, I don't. But what I do have is a lot of experience and enthusiasm for making products and websites as beautiful as they are functional. This video is brought to you by Envato, unlimited creative assets and the broadest range of categories, all in one place. Follow the link in the description and start creating now. People tell me that my work somehow looks different from designs they see elsewhere on the web. Maybe that's because I've got a very personal approach to design that I've developed over the past 30 years working online. Perhaps it's because I came from an art school background where ideas mattered as much, if not more, than execution. Maybe it's because I work with clients who are willing to explore and sometimes even take risks. I have to be brutally honest though. I'm tired of the designs that I see online every day. Tired of the absence of artistry. I'm tired of designs that are hardly more than skins over frameworks and templates. Look at this design for a property and real estate developer. And this one. And this one. Now, cast your eyes over these designs for several community groups and non-profit organisations. Can you notice a pattern? Thanks to all-in-one platforms like Squarespace and Wix, site builders like Framer and Webflow, and frameworks like Google's Material Design, the web is chock full of products and websites that look great, work well, and they provide smooth user experiences. But these days, with millions of websites vying for people's attention, simply being good-looking, functional and easy to use just isn't enough. A massive missed opportunity to create something that reflects a client's distinctive personality. What should I call this type of design? I'm calling these types of designs a commodity. There's nothing wrong with them. They're not ugly. They do the job. I'll happily stay at a characterless hotel for a night or two and only expect an okay experience at best. But there's nothing to distinguish it. I don't mind renting a mid-range car, but I don't expect I'll enjoy driving it. It's a commodity, like dozens of other models that drive exactly the same way. So now that I've defined commodity design, what's a standout design and what goes into making one? It distinguishes itself in meaningful ways, thinking carefully about what makes a brand unique and designing an experience that supports it. It has a solid visual identity with colours and typefaces, an illustration or photography style that helps to convey a brand's unique personality. And it includes iconography, which helps someone to understand the content. And it doesn't just decorate it. It presents content imaginatively and provide an enjoyable and ultimately memorable experience. With millions of digital products and websites vying for people's attention, why do so many look similar? Somehow, a distinctive design remains the exception. Maybe it's because people now rely so heavily on frameworks. In the past, frameworks like Bootstrap, which made the Jumbotron full-width banner image so famous, launched so many imitations that people even set up websites to parody them. Because it was so easy to customize the built-in components, Bootstrap became the go-to framework for developers who build digital products. Bootstrap and Material include a generic 12-column grid and 2-up, 3-up, and 4-up layout components. Then there are the all-in-one site builder platforms, including Squarespace and Wix, which are aimed both at the DIY market and as tools for web designers to build their clients' websites. Both have template libraries to kickstart new websites that contain, you guessed it, generic 12-column grids and 2-up, 3-up, and 4-up component layouts. These platforms have pushed AI as a web design tool. It can create sitemaps and wireframes and even generate content without you needing to do much more than push a couple of buttons. But how custom is custom? Well, it turns out not very. And the results too frequently include, wait for it, full-width banner images, 2-up, 3-up, and 4-up component layouts. Maybe our modern tools encourage generic designs, because neither Figma nor Sketch offers an alternative to an even ratio column-based grid. Figma includes an AI tool to generate generic patterns from a prompt and turn them into a new design mockup. However, the reason so many product and website designs look the same goes deeper than frameworks and patterns and tools, and it's got a lot to do with our approach to responsive layouts. When flexible layouts became necessary, most designers ditched complexity and opted for simple layout patterns. That single flexible column of text that we see so often easily adapts to different screen sizes. The generic 12-column grid is divisible by 2, 3, and 4, so no one needs to be a maths professor to calculate a layout. It's also possible that designers and their clients might think it's too risky to offer something different. This is the argument that I hear most often when I talk about the importance of standout designs. Our job as designers is to serve the brief. We study what a client needs and propose ways to satisfy them. When we believe that an alternative solution to a problem will provide the best outcome, we should never be afraid to stand by our convictions. After all, our clients are paying for our expertise and experience. I often wonder if our education system is failing young designers. None of the web design, web development, or user experience courses I've lectured at teach students the fundamental principles of graphic design and how they might apply to product and website designs. This leaves students with little option but to look at other products and websites for ideas and inspiration. You need to develop your curiosity as a skill and keep your eyes, and your mind, open to investigating alternative ideas. Then it takes practice to study content and understand how best to present it. But I can't blame students, because many seasoned professionals also appear to lack that curiosity. Instead of opening their minds to the influence of designers outside the web, they follow established conventions. This is why so many products and websites look the same. And it's our industry's biggest problem today. Look, I'd be lazy if I blamed the rise of frameworks. Frameworks can kickstart a design, which becomes a commodity only when designers don't do more than apply a theme. There's nothing wrong with developing a design from a Squarespace or a Wix template, because those platforms make website development more accessible to non-technical people. I even sell a range of Squarespace templates. But applying a theme can never be considered designing. So it's up to designers to create new normals, or best of all, no normals at all. AI can be harnessed, but it's not in control yet. I use ChatGPT every day to write placeholder copy instead of using Lorem Ipsum, and I frequently use Midjourney to create placeholder images instead of relying on those low-resolution stock previews. But no generative AI tool can produce anything valuable unless it's given the correct prompt. And that's why educating yourself on many aspects of design, becoming more curious, and being inspired by album and book covers, magazines, posters, and many other sources of inspiration is key to unlocking better designs. Around 10 years ago, I wasn't just tired of seeing products and websites that looked the same. I was just exhausted from making them. If I needed a place to introduce a business, there was a full-width banner with a background image, a headline, and a button for that. When designing a page to sell a product, I followed conventions that had been tested and were proven to convert. But this left me feeling more like an assembly line worker who mass-produced websites and less like a designer. I just needed a break, some inspiration. Then, legendary editorial designer Mark Porter called me to ask if I wanted to collaborate on an online magazine design. Studying magazine design opened my mind to an entirely new area. The more I was exposed to, the more excited I became about the possibilities of making something meaningful for the web. Studying a designer's work in another medium and applying it to the web can be a great way to learn, and it can also be a lot of fun. What's important is understanding the problem a designer aimed to solve, learning about their process, and then exploring how they might have tackled the problem that we're working on. Let me give you a quick example. Swiss artist and typographer Karl Gerstner was among the first designers to exploit grid's creative flexibility. The compound grid that he designed in 1962 for Capital magazine has become one of his best-known creations. Capital had a wide variety of content, and Gerstner needed a grid flexible enough to lay out content consistently and without restrictions. This grid allowed Gerstner to arrange content on Capital's pages rapidly and in a structured manner. It helped him solve design problems without dictating the final result. For instance, Gerstner took advantage of the modular structure of his grid to design a distinctive layout for this spread. These two pages are built on the same foundation despite their different appearances. A closer look shows how the large image on the left is balanced by the visual weight of the text columns on the right. Even with the same underlying structure, results can look entirely different. Gerstner's grid is versatile. In this example for Capital, he arranged multiple images and text blocks to reveal the underlying grid structure. I'm fascinated by editorial and magazine design, and I look at it whenever I need inspiration for a new layout. I've become so obsessed with magazine shops that I can't walk past one without going in. Individual magazines have design systems which, like plenty of websites today, help maintain consistency throughout an issue and over time. When I pick up a magazine, I look for something I haven't seen before. Sometimes I'll see something as simple as a block quote design with an unusual layout, or marks, or typography style that makes me wonder how I might create something similar for my next design. Of course, If magazines aren't quite your cup of tea, there are plenty more ways to quench your thirst for inspiration. Although you might not think they're related at first, book covers and website designs aim to communicate messages to an audience through visual storytelling. A well-designed book cover emphasizes the book's title, author name, and imagery, guiding someone's eyes to these focal points. The composition and layout focus on what's most important. Book covers often incorporate bold typographic treatments and use typefaces which express a book's genre or theme. Serifs might be chosen for classical literature, while sans serifs and scripts could be more appropriate for contemporary fiction. Just as book cover typography might embody a book's spirit, the typefaces that we choose for a website design can influence someone's perception of a brand or a product. Carefully chosen colours can convey a book's genre and theme. Dark hues might suit mysteries and thrillers, while brighter colours could be more appropriate for romances. Your choice of colours on the web can create an atmosphere, reflect brand values, and draw attention to content or calls to action. Every element suggests a narrative, and by adopting a similar story-based approach to website design, we can create captivating, memorable experiences. A company's annual report often presents financial and performance data, and websites can adopt a similar narrative style using images, text, and other visual elements to tell the story of a company's history, mission, or its critical milestones. Back in 1960, Eric Nischer designed a 426-page book for his client, General Dynamics. Every so often, I slip it out of its dust jacket and flick through the pages. I really love how Nischer's design for this book spreads out from the center of each spread, instead of starting at the top of each page and then working down. There are no columns that run from the top to the bottom. They all stay in the middle, leaving deep margins which Nischer either left empty or he used for illustrations or photographs. And this design creates a really clever pacing throughout the book. I wouldn't have expected that instruction manuals could be inspiring, but they can for particular projects because their structure is designed to communicate complex content clearly. The principles and strategies they use can be adopted for products and websites. A manual's step-by-step structure could inspire a design for an interactive user journey. It might include numbered steps or progress indicators. Manuals also use diagrams, iconography. On the web, icons and infographics can make complex content much more accessible. As surprising as it might seem, product and website designers also have a lot in common with architects. A web designer should be concerned with how a space makes people feel and consider how they'll use it. This means considering accessibility and flow, movement. Architects use structural frameworks to define a building's proportions and then organize its space. In the same way, web designers can use grids to structure content, using proportions to create a hierarchy that makes content more accessible and easily understood. And every designer should work to understand how symmetry and asymmetry can affect someone's perception of a design. Fanzines, amateur magazines made by fans, often didn't have the typical constraints, and text was frequently angled, positioned in unexpected places, or wrapped around images. This anti-design approach can translate into websites using broken grids, uneven margins, or unpredictable layouts. The DIY approach to fanzine design often resulted in handmade or imperfect-looking designs, which we might replicate using hand-drawn style icons. maybe uneven typography or intentionally placed visual noise that gives websites a more approachable, human feel. All right, enough looking, let's get down to some doing. Let me introduce you to the Daily Grind, the coffee lovers brand that I'll use to illustrate the differences between a commodity and a standout design. The Daily Grind aims to be the go-to website for people who love coffee. There are recipes, techniques, and tips. And finally, there's an online store that sells those all-important coffee-making essentials. The Daily Grind was launched a year ago, and the owners now want to build their brand and increase their revenue by commissioning a new design that combines a bold brand personality with a highly crafted, caffeinated user experience. So how would I use inspiration in my work to make their stories more compelling? As designers, it's not just our job, but it's our responsibility to our clients and their audience, and just as importantly, ourselves, to always look for opportunities to improve our designs. Having shown you a few of the places that I frequently look for design inspiration, I want to explain where we can use what we find to transform a commodity design into one that stands out. This might include improving the typography in a design, giving it more personality while making it more readable. It could be by adding impact to a design by finding new ways to use banners and other large images. It can also involve studying the content to find elements within the text that expressive typography can illustrate or enhance. Looking at these article designs from the Daily Grind's current blog, with its generic banner images and flat typography hierarchy, uninspiring content, you can see that there are opportunities for improvement in all those areas. By being inspired, I can make a design with content that's far more accessible and compelling and communicative. Brands have individual stories about their products, work, and themselves. And designers can use layouts to tell them. They can be neutral or opinionated. They can make people feel calm or put them on edge. Or they can just scream, "Oi, look at me." So here are two examples. Densely packed news stories with minimal white space make a conservative organisation look serious. On the other hand, more sensationalist news outlets might use more white space and their content is less tightly packed. Many news outlets and magazines I speak to need help with the challenge of regularly creating custom article designs. They want their designs to enhance content and make it more engaging, but they battle with their process and their publishing platforms. The Daily Grind publishes a weekly magazine article, and most are presented on the same single column layout. But the team was keen to investigate new ways to add variety to their articles, starting with banners and other large images. Every article in the Daily Grind magazine has space for a full-width banner image at the top of every page. This isn't surprising, as it's the default for most frameworks and site builders. Given the familiarity of these banners, it isn't hard to understand why designers include them and why so many clients maybe expect them. But, there are other options. One of the magazine art directors I admire most is Alexei Brodovich. Born in Russia in 1898, he was a fascinating character and an inspiring designer. Forced into exile, Brodovich moved to Paris, where he met artists including Marc Chagall and was exposed to movements such as Bauhaus and constructivism. Brodovich moved to the United States, where he aimed to develop American advertising to the level of design in Europe. Harper's Bazaar magazine became Brodovich's most well-known project, and his art direction has influenced designers since the 1940s. His elegant designs and knowledge of photography gave his work his classic feel. Brodovich often cropped photographs in unexpected ways, and he placed them off-center, sometimes bleeding them outside the margins of the page to create compositions that are full of energy and movement. These scattered pictures might initially seem like a random arrangement, but they were deliberately placed and filled Brodovich's design with movement. We can use the same technique today, even when designing flexible layouts. Designs like these are ideal for using modular rather than column grids. Modules can be used individually or combined into larger units that are known as spatial zones. They inform the position and size of elements within a composition, like the images in this design. Scattering these images across the page adds energy and movement to a design, and arranging multiple pictures is a fabulous alternative to a single full-width banner image. An oversized headline fits neatly under the scattered pictures, and it leads the eye towards the content, which I split into columns to give it a more editorial feel. But you know, a horizontal banner isn't the only option for attracting attention. Vertical images can look even better, so I rearranged these scattered pictures and spread them over 2/3 of the screen, confining the block of running text to a narrow column. When I place them on the left, these images set the scene before someone starts reading. But swapping the position of the images and text, the pictures switch roles and now appear to support the story. Finally, surrounding text on both sides with images and allowing it to flow around them creates a fluid-looking composition. Simply by changing to a darker theme and switching the typeface, and the design takes on an altogether different feel. Then, swapping that headline for graphic text and sampling colours from nearby images adds a powerful personality which is engaging, it's entertaining. This composition works equally well in portrait orientation for medium-sized screens. Then, there's Brazilian art director Bea Feitler, who worked on Harper's Bazaar magazine, but decades after Alexei Brodovich. Now, she's been described as the pioneering female art director you've never heard of. Feitler understood that magazine pages should be deliberately and individually constructed, and yet connected to one another to form a harmonious rhythm. She combined Brodovich's mastery of the double-page spread with her own bold colours and typography choices. Feitler said that a book was 50-50 image to text, and on the web, we also need to allow for interactive features and video. She frequently used contrasts in scale between her large and small images and passages of text. The content of this image of a woman drinking the strongest cup of coffee ever doesn't suit a wide banner. So, inspired by Feitler's mastery of the double-page spread, I filled half the viewport width, but all the height, making the isolated cup of flaming coffee much smaller emphasizes the contrast in scale, giving the larger image a greater impact. Magazine designers like Bea Feitler often expanded large images, so they didn't just fill an entire page, they spread across the gutter onto the opposing page. Expanding this large image to occupy 9 of the 12 columns leaves space for a narrower column of running text on the left, with careful placement of a stand-first paragraph and a button over that large image. There's ample room for a call to action. In the 1950s, the Swiss style influenced a new generation of graphic designers in the US, who built on its modernist legacy and combined function with powerful imagery. Willy Fleckhaus isn't a name often mentioned in the context of product and website design. But still, I love this German designer's mastery of layouts. As a former journalist, Fleckhouse knew the power of storytelling and intuitively understood how his medium could tell stories. He carefully selected images and used typography to communicate narratives more effectively than pictures and words alone. In 1953, Fleckhouse joined Twen, which is German for 20, and worked on the magazine until it closed in 1971. Twen was groundbreaking and stunning to look at. He often tightly cropped images and enlarged them to dominate his spreads. In this spread, devoted to Yves Montand, Fleckhouse used an extreme close-up of the French-Italian actor. The design has a simple structure, but the text that wraps around the tiny figure makes it feel looser, more organic. I can apply the same close-up technique to my article page by tightly cropping the image onto the woman's face to emphasize her reaction after drinking the strongest cup of coffee. Fleckhouse often places enlarged images so that they bled off the side of the page. For this article about American jazz musician John Coltrane, he dropped the tightly cropped image from the top of the page and occupies 6 of the 8 columns. The single tall text column and the pre-formatted headline emphasize the visual direction in this design. I might use a similar technique, but with an even more extreme close-up of the woman's face and place it partly off-screen, adding drama and tension. Another compelling aspect of Fleckhouse's designs was the contrast in scale, and the results were as playful as they were powerful. I'm always fascinated to see how my choice and placement of images can transform the impact of a design. For example, compare these 2 identical layouts. One where I enlarge the flaming coffee cup to fill half the viewport to emphasize just how powerful this brew is. I deliberately made the woman drinking the coffee small to emphasize the difference in scale between her and the cup. In the second version, I swapped the image's positions, zooming in to focus on her reaction and making the cup of coffee smaller. This shifts the narrative from the coffee to her reaction after drinking it. And I find these nuanced differences between what are otherwise identical layouts really fascinating. In this design that pulls together Pipes and Popeye, Fleckhouse places pictures so that they intersect with the text. Their placement's apparent informality contrasts with the column structure and adds energy and movement. I wanted the same feeling for this final Fleckhouse-inspired design. Next time you're looking for a simple way to make a design feel different, try swapping the generic 12-column grid for one that's got 8 columns. Incredibly, even a composition as fluid-looking as this has got the structure of a grid behind it. The width of the text is defined by the grid, as are the size and position of the images, which cut into the columns and could be implemented using CSS shapes. The images appear in the foreground and in the background, increasing the feeling of depth. Although their work differed significantly, these inspirational magazine art directors shared something. They understood that their designs could make the content that they worked with more compelling, more engaging, and understandable. I now study content and look for the opportunities to extract and illustrate information. I've kind of developed a possibly unhealthy fascination with block quotes and pull quotes and finding alternative ways to style them. I frequently find the design of quotation marks in even the fanciest fonts pretty underwhelming. So whenever I encounter a new typeface, I look for its quotes and then I add them to my collection. I look for quote designs that reflect the rest of my design with rounded or sharp corners, slanted or upright sides, high contrast or even weight strokes. I often experiment with block quote and pull quote designs by overlapping the marks or combining solid and stroked shapes. Take this Daily Grind article. Reading through the copy, I found a section about facts and figures about the strength of coffee. There's barely any difference between this section and the rest of the content on the page, so I wanted to find ways to help it stand out and be readable at a glance. I could use typography to make these facts more readable, but given the article is about strength, they needed a strong design to match. I can add iconography to a more graphical list of facts and figures, or I could use the variety of weights that are available in this Monte Stella typeface and turning the text itself into graphical elements. I can combine these two approaches by integrating the iconography with the typography to create a set of stylized sections that can either be used together or separately by enclosing one in a circle and maybe flowing my text around it. This treatment adds visual appeal to the page. It helps bring its information to life, which is essential to the brand, and it communicates the content more clearly, which is vital for the customer experience. This video is brought to you by Envato, unlimited creative assets and the broadest range of categories, all in one place. Follow the link in the description and start creating now. My favourite projects are the ones where I'm given a clean slate and free rein to design something unique. Of course, that doesn't mean that I can indulge myself. It's about accomplishing the goals that a client has set out in their brief. That said, it would be wrong to suggest that designers shouldn't bring something of themselves to a project. Last year, the Daily Grind introduced a new insurance product exclusively for cafe and coffee shop owners. There's no insurance product quite like that. My brief from the team was to design pages to introduce it to the market. I knew that this could be challenging. The insurance industry isn't known for its creative appeal. After my first redesign attempt, the Daily Grind team weren't afraid to tell me that they wanted their insurance pages to make a stronger statement. I designed my first iteration using a column grid, and while the content was well organized and the design felt balanced, it just lacked the energy that this product launch demanded. So it was back to the drawing board. Most businesses already have some brand assets. A brand is how someone perceives an organization, a business or an entity, and it encompasses what it stands for. Are they adventurous and fun and exciting to be around? What people feel about a company is their brand, but what they see is its visual identity. A visual identity with consistently applied assets will look competent, and a well-written style guide can help it sound authentic. It might appear rebellious with unexpected color, texture, and type combinations. That's the type of brand that the Daily Grind aspires to be. There are 5 main elements in any visual identity. There's the color palette, typography, illustrations and photography, and graphics and iconography. And then there's the logo. The Daily Grind has used the same set of colors since they started the business. It includes some black for text, white for backgrounds, a few coffee-colored browns, and a zesty orange accent color. Although they were willing to explore new colors, they were absolutely adamant about retaining that signature orange. Their original design used the free and therefore ubiquitous Montserrat typeface. And as for illustrations and photography, the previous design used stock icons and imagery. Very little original illustration. Before starting a new design, I always want to learn not just about the brief, but about the story behind the brief. The Daily Grind is shaking up the insurance business. They don't just want to do things differently, they want to do it better because they understand cafes and coffee shops. They're hip, they're young, and they have a personality which resonates with their target demographic. First, I need to start researching and finding examples where designers might have encountered similar challenges so that I can understand their approach to solving them. And even highly regarded, well-known designers have spent time working with mundane subjects and still produce some iconic work. Swiss graphic designer Max Huber worked for many leading Italian brands, but his designs for La Rinascente stores are fascinating too. These designers can teach us that even the most mundane subjects can offer exciting communication opportunities. In Milan during the 1940s, Huber mixed with avant-garde artists, designers, and intellectuals. And this mixture stimulated Huber, and he experimented with blending creative work from many disciplines. He manipulated photographs, he cut subjects from their backgrounds, and he mixed them with blocks of colour and shapes. Huber often used flat shapes and overlapped them with monochrome and duotone photographs. Huber familiarized himself with the work of abstract artists and the Russian constructivist art movement. His use of geometry reflects those influences throughout his work, and I wanted to reference that in my banner design for the Daily Grind. Huber's 1946 poster for the Sirenella Ballroom in Zurich shows a drummer surrounded by colourful circles representing the music. Rather than randomly arrange these elements, I added some guides that inform the position and size of my circles, and they appear in front of and behind the dazed-looking barista. Rather than simply list the benefits of this product, I use those same guides to inform the angles and the position of the text. Huber frequently mixed cut-out photographs with his colourful shapes. So I added monochrome coffee cups and arranged them at angles to add movement and to suggest the chaotic nature of the life of so many cafe and coffee shop owners. When I'm working on a design, I always like to consider how the light and the dark themes will be visually connected. For this jazz time poster, Max Huber combined disc shapes and piano keys with a strongly half-toned image of a jazz pianist. Now, adding half-tone patterns to a monochrome or duotone image can be a great way to imply that they've been cut out from a magazine or a newspaper. I experimented with several blending modes that add depth and they soften the overall feeling of this design. These have been available as CSS properties for years, but I don't see designers using them as often as they should. His poster for La Rinascente blends a cutout photo with angled text and colourful overlapping shapes. Taking a similar approach for this version of my Daily Grind banner, blending overlapping shapes and angling the text adds depth, it adds energy. Lester Beale was an American graphic designer and one of the country's leading proponents of modernist design during the 1940s and 50s. Incredibly, Beale was self-taught, but he read widely, he studied hard, and he developed a talent by combining art, photography, printing and typography with European ideas about page layout and typographic form. He became a major construction image maker. Beale integrated blocks of colour, lines and geometric shapes. He used foreground and background elements to bring a sense of perspective into his designs. He confidently mixed type styles and added angled lines of text. Montage and photo montage were how Beale best incorporated European influences, allowing him to blend the abstract with the real. He glued together pieces of photographic prints. In my banner design for the Daily Grind, I wanted to echo Lester Beale's mixture of the abstract and the real. Similar receding perspective lines behind my befuddled-looking barista give this design a slightly uneasy feeling, which makes it even more striking in this alternative complementary colour theme. Beale regularly placed his cutout images into irregular shapes, which are accidental looking but at the same time deliberate. For this banner design, I echoed the angled headline and the irregular shape from Beale's When I Think Back poster, and I used the negative space that it created to place my text and the call to action. He designed 3 sets of 6 posters, and this one, called Radio, uses the perspective that's formed by his 3 arrows and his flattened perspective that pushes the eye towards the isolated homestead. And it adds energy to what might otherwise appear to have been a static design. So I angled this text to converge on the baffled looking barista's face and used the background shape to anchor her into the space. The Daily Grind aspires to be a rebellious brand, and for teenagers like me growing up in the 1980s, reading the Face magazine just seemed like an act of rebellion. The Face became a pop culture mirror to the political and social turmoil in Britain at the time. Its unconventional and thought-provoking designs and Neville Brody's subsequent work redefined the British music press from the 1980s onward, and it influenced a generation of designers. With The Face, Brody questioned the structure of a magazine and how people experience it. And I find many parallels between how he explored the multi-page magazine reading experience and how people use the web. This rule-breaking attitude wasn't at the expense of usability, as Brody's designs for The Face still use a grid, which provides structure and continuity throughout the magazine. In many ways, the full-width banners that have taken over the web like some invasive species fulfill a similar role to a magazine cover. Many of the early covers of The Face, like this one that features the Eurythmics' Annie Lennox, were just masterclasses in cover design. Although the Daily Grind's insurance page doesn't need a masthead, I was keen to experiment with using a similar style for this banner's giant headline. Like a magazine masthead, the headline might appear in front of the startled-looking subject or behind it, so that the subject and headline text overlap. And with a centered subject, there's ample room on both sides for a summary or other content. Banners can achieve the goal of attracting attention, summarizing, and communicating without filling the width of the page. They can work equally well when only partly filling the screen. For example, this composition fills 75% of the width, creating space for content that would have otherwise been outside the viewport. I can allow those Huber-style overlapping blocks of colour to fill the page that creates irregular shapes and a dynamic-looking design that's full of energy. And this can be amplified by tilting the figure a few degrees to the right. My goal was to create a distinctive banner to introduce the Daily Grind's newest insurance product. It needed to be attention-grabbing and rebellious looking and communicate that this company and its products are unlike anything that's available on the market. I frequently shortlist 3 options before I present them to a client. So which one of these designs do you think best fulfills that brief? Choosing the correct hierarchy of typography sizes is one of the most important but frequently overlooked aspects of a standout design. Your selection can significantly impact how a design looks, how well it communicates, and ultimately how successful it will be. For centuries, designers have used scale to create typographic hierarchies, and every scale is based on mathematical ratios. A typographic scale ensures that type sizes remain in harmony, and a hierarchy tells people which information is the most important and makes the content structure more noticeable. The contrast between headlines and body text is among the most critical relationships in a typographic hierarchy. Low contrast feels academic and authoritative. High contrast looks adventurous, even daring. The steeper the scale, the more drama. So how many steps are needed? Well, that's going to depend on your content and the brand personality. More steps indicate sophistication and subtlety, while fewer steps seem more confident, maybe even brash. The team at the Daily Grind wanted their typography to be big and bold and brash to match their brand personality. My brief was to select a scale that balanced a comfortable reading experience with impactful headlines. My process began by visualizing how a scale might impact the feel of my design. For example, this abstract view of the differences between a base font and the most prominent headline uses shapes to judge their relative sizes. Other times, I compare the relationships better by placing text snippets side by side. This gives a greater sense of which scale produces the correct contrast between body text and headlines. So I immediately ruled out a shallower scale because the contrast between small and large text just wasn't dramatic enough. Two of the steepest scales, the perfect fourth and the augmented fourth, proved themselves to be the most likely candidates. Although abstract shapes and text snippets are handy for driving the design in the right direction, I could only decide which scale would deliver the results I was aiming for after seeing low fidelity sketches of a complete page. The perfect fourth scale provided the drama that the Daily Grind team and I felt their design demanded, with sizes ranging from a 16 pixel base font size to an eye-popping 283 pixels for headlines. The Daily Grind wanted a daring typography design to match its brand personality. On larger screens, those oversized headlines feel exhilarating, and they became a cornerstone of my design, one of its most distinctive features. By combining their gigantic text with tight leading and tracking, these headlines form solid blocks that don't politely ask people to pay attention, they demand to get noticed. Storytelling stirs emotions and creates deep personal connections with someone. Graphics, illustrations, and photographs can make stories more memorable. That's because we're naturally drawn to images. Our brains find it easier to process them, and we're more able to retain the information that they convey. You'll find plenty of rich text content and tabular data in magazine and news articles. This magazine article about coffee growing countries contains data on the world's biggest coffee producers. A table offers a structured view of that information, but illustrating it in a chart or a graph form makes it much more appealing. Different charts and graphs present information in various ways, but they can all reveal insights into the data. The horizontal or vertical blocks in a bar or a column chart make it easy to compare values. Donuts and pies are similarly circular, but the hole in a donut can be filled with legends and keys and titles. Size is an easily understandable visual cue, and comparison charts demonstrate data using the relative sizes of icons or numbers or shapes. Arranging them in size order can provide a hierarchy making this type of chart understandable to people who don't have a deep knowledge of the data. Libraries and online tools make creating off-the-shelf charts easy to implement. But rather than relying on someone else's methods for presenting data, you might use a series of differently sized concentric circles to represent how much Arabica and Robusta coffee was grown in a given year. This design is understandable, it's visually appealing, and it can be easily customized with brand colors. Content should be illustrated in ways that resonate with a brand's identity. And brands should tell stories in their own way and use their unique style to stand out. Remember that illustrating content is as much about the story behind the data as it is about the data itself. For example, this story about why a cafe or coffee shop needs insurance has densely packed passages of text. It's rich in content, but some readers might find the amount of text overwhelming. And there's no point in a story that no one's going to read. So to encourage someone to start, help them understand its subject and make it more accessible. Studying this article reveals facts about why a cafe or a coffee shop needs insurance, and they can be translated into graphics. Of 200 million in claims, 60% were slips and falls. I could visualize this with a pie chart, but this is about coffee, not pies. That 60% makes 120 million. The average cost was 60,000, which makes 2,000 claims. 35% of businesses will experience property damage, and 25% of businesses won't reopen after a disaster. When you want graphics to be part of a narrative, place them in the flow so that they blend seamlessly with the text. Otherwise, create space for them alongside the text where they support rather than interrupt the story. Or you can make them look different by adding boxes and borders. Infographics are now widely used in education, journalism, and marketing to communicate complex information, and they're powerful tools which can make content accessible, engaging, and ultimately more memorable. Whether content comes from a magazine or a news article, a product or a store, infographic techniques can often bring it to life in ways that would be impossible through text and typography alone. Rather than use these as supporting elements, they can become the primary storytelling device and even take over the entire page to form a complete infographic-inspired design. If the Daily Grind were an actual client, I hope they'd appreciate how a standout design can better help them achieve their business goals. Opening my eyes to designs from outside the web has made me a better product and website designer. Learning about designers who worked in other media has broadened my outlook and given me ideas that I might never have thought of were they not for studying their work. So at the end of this short course, I'd like you to think about what inspires you. It'll no doubt be different from what inspires me. But bring that inspiration into your work and make designs that will make you and others happy. What better motivation could there be for being a designer anyway?